Today, we're diving into the most capital-hungry, intensely secretive, and fiercely fought-over infrastructure on planet Earth. We are breaking down the absolute behemoth that is the business of data centers. These are the quiet engines keeping our entire loud digital world running. To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this, listen to how our sources describe these places. Right now, somewhere in Virginia, there's a windowless gray building the size of several football fields, drinking enough electricity to power a small city. Think about that for a second. We're talking about a highly guarded, completely unglamorous building, no sign out front, no visitors, no storefront. Just rows and rows of humming machines secured literally like a bank vault.
And this perfectly captures the core irony of what we're looking at today. Nobody walks past one of these gray, windowless boxes and thinks, wow, there's a business making billions of dollars in there. It looks like the most boring real estate on Earth. But hiding behind that plain exterior is a massive, incredibly risky financial bet driven by the explosion of artificial intelligence. Every text you send, every movie you stream, and every AI prompt you generate relies completely on these buildings.
All right, Section 1, Anatomy of a Data Center, stripping away the mystery.
So our sources break down the actual execution of this seemingly simple concept, just housing computers, into 5 wildly complex, super expensive components. You aren't just putting a laptop in a closet here, you're building a literal fortress. You have to keep thousands of servers running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without ever going down. That requires redundant power supplies with massive backup generators. It requires industrial-scale cooling because these AI chips run hot enough to cook an egg. It requires physical security to protect highly sensitive data, and, of course, robust fiber optic networks to move mountains of data in and out every single second.
Now, the crucial thing to understand is that not all data centers are created equal. Our sources outlined 3 main categories. First, you've got enterprise data centers. Think of a major bank running its own internal systems. It's essentially just a cost center. Second is colocation, which operates kind of like a landlord. The owner builds the facility and rents out secured server cages and power to other businesses. But the third category? Hyperscale. This is where the true explosion is happening. We're talking about giant facilities built by tech titans, often covering millions of square feet, specifically to run massive cloud platforms and train the next generation of AI models. Moving on to Section 2, where the money goes, the extraordinary liabilities. Yes, over $10 billion. While a basic older data center might set you back maybe $10 to $20 million, the newest AI-focused campuses being announced right now carry price tags soaring well over $10 billion for a single campus. That's insane. It's truly one of the most expensive infrastructure plays in corporate history. And when you break down the cost hierarchy, it's pretty surprising. The building shell itself, the actual concrete and steel, is actually the cheapest part of the whole shebang. It gets completely overshadowed by what's inside. The power infrastructure alone can rival a mid-sized city's grid. Then you have the cooling. AI chips run so incredibly hot that traditional air conditioning just isn't enough anymore. Developers are having to install massive liquid cooling systems that circulate coolant right through the server racks. But the biggest cost? The specialized AI processors themselves. Those can cost tens of thousands of dollars for a single chip, and these campuses require tens of thousands of them. So, with $10 billion on the line, it really begs a fascinating question. Why not just build these things in prime downtown tech hubs? Well, the answer is that data centers operate on a totally different kind of logic than traditional real estate. Unlike a high-end shopping mall, these assets actively avoid dense urban cores. They don't want foot traffic at all. What they desperately need is cheap electricity, oceans of water for cooling, and solid tax breaks. This is exactly why unglamorous areas, like rural zones with cheap hydropower or regions like Northern Virginia, have become the unlikely data center capitals of the world. Okay, let's jump into Section 3, how the money is made, the revenue engine. So the revenue model here actually operates a lot like a traditional real estate landlord, but instead of renting out apartments, you're leasing computing power. Revenue can come from traditional colocation, where you charge by the kilowatt and rack space. It can come from cloud computing, where clients pay for tiny slices of infrastructure by the minute. But the fastest growing sector right now is AI compute leasing. Data centers are literally leasing blocks of time on those ultra-expensive AI chips to other companies. And for the biggest players, they sign massive 10-year wholesale agreements for an entire building before the foundation is even poured. Let's walk through how these massive projects actually get financed, because it highlights the critical role of something called an off-take agreement. Think of it kind of like securing a long-term tenant before you even build the apartment complex. Because these things cost billions. Even tech giants don't always want to pay out of pocket. So a tech company signs an off-take agreement, legally committing to lease the capacity for years. The data center developer then takes that guaranteed contract straight to private equity firms and banks to secure the massive debt needed to build. They're securing multi-billion-dollar funding before a shovel even hits the dirt. But listen, securing the revenue is really only half the battle, because the operating expenses on these things are absolutely relentless. When you break down the operating costs, electricity is the undisputed heavyweight, costing hundreds of millions annually just to keep the lights on and the servers humming. Cooling takes another massive bite out of the budget. But honestly, the most brutal expense is hardware depreciation. Unlike an office building that lasts 50 years, those cutting-edge AI chips become technologically obsolete in just a few short years. That means you are trapped in this endless, hyper-expensive upgrade cycle just to stay relevant. Add in 24/7 specialized engineers and biometric security, and the margins require absolutely flawless execution. Which brings us to Section 4, the bottom line, risks and the future. From the outside, the AI boom makes data centers look like a guaranteed money printing machine, right? But beneath the surface, the industry actually faces some severe vulnerabilities. Consider the concentration of demand. The entire boom relies heavily on just a few AI giants. If they slow down, the whole market is severely overbuilt. We already touched on technological obsolescence, but there's also a very real physical bottleneck happening right now: global power availability. The electrical grids literally cannot keep up with the demand, and that's causing years of delays for new projects. Combine that gridlock with high interest rates on highly leveraged debt and rising regulatory pushback from local communities over water and power usage, and the risk profile is surprisingly sharp. The overarching takeaway from our source material is this really profound irony. A Las Vegas casino advertises itself with flashy neon lights designed to draw you in and show off its wealth, right? But the most valuable, fiercely contested infrastructure in the modern economy actively avoids being noticed. It makes its money by quietly hiding behind a plain gray wall and a chain link fence, reliably running the digital world in the background. Given the staggering, really unproven capital commitments being made today, we want to leave you with a provocative final thought to consider about the physical limits of our digital expansion. Are we building the necessary foundation for the next century of human intelligence? Or are we repeating the dot-com boom, where companies laid billions of dollars of fiber optic cables that ended up sitting dark and unused for years? The outcome of this massive infrastructure bet is absolutely going to define the next era of technology. Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and keep questioning what's running quietly in the background.